Okay, today we're going to start on Hey and Aleph, just a few lines from the bottom. That I think it's 6 lines from the bottom. Loi Hare Hashar Kare Amava. Hey and Aleph. We didn't turn the page over. We're supposed to have turned the page a little bit behind. We thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. And in the schus of our learning, we should have Beis Hamikdash immediately. The Gemara says like this. We're quoting from the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that the ox is not like Mava. No, Mava is hard to translate because it's machlekes. If it means the teeth, which means eating, enjoyment that an animal gets, or if it means a person that causes damage. It's machlekes Rav and Shmuel. Okay, so whatever the case is, the Mishnah says that the ox is not like Mava. Micah Amar, what is the Mishnah saying when it's saying that? Now, Rashi says, why does it need to say it at all? And Tosfos excuse me, that it seems to be a little different than the way it is in the rest of Shas. That's what Tosfos' comment is. Okay, so we say like this. Amar Rav Zvid Mishmei de Rava. Rav Zvid says in the name of Rava that Hachi Kamar, what the Mishnah is saying is that Lichtei Brachman Chada V'Teisi Idach Minei. Why does the Torah not just say one of these damages, and I'll be able to learn out that damages the person's obligated to pay? Why do you have to have every single type of damage? You have 4 types of damages. Just say that if the ox causes damage, and we'll understand that if a fire causes damage and if a pit causes damage, and the same with shar and mava. If it causes damage with the foot, then it would cause same as if it causes damage with the tooth. Why does it? We can learn one from the other. Other Amar, but then the Mishnah says that you can't learn one from the other. Why can't you learn one from the other? Because what it says is that this strength of this one is not like the strength of that one. So to spell it out, it would say that if it would only say Shane, for example, then I would think that Shane has enjoyment from the damages. Give me 1 second. And if it would say, if Shane has enjoyment from the damages, but the foot doesn't have enjoyment from the damage, so that's why it's not you're not chayav by the foot. I wouldn't know it. And if it would only say the foot, which means regel, when it causes damage while it's walking, then I would say that that's very common, and that's why you're chayav. But Shane, which is not so common, it's not like constantly walking, so then I would say that you're exempt. Or if you would go to Adam, it would be like this: that Adam has to pay. Adam means man. When it causes damage, it has to pay 4 or 5 times the damage, which is remember Nezek Tzar Sheves Ripei Boishas. All those other payments besides for the Bipshia, of course, when it causes direct damage. But an animal doesn't have to pay it. And if it would say an animal, then I would say that an animal pays kaifer. Okay. Now, what is this that you're showing me in the notes? Going back to, in the notes, Hillel is showing me that what we learned yesterday was that there were 2 brises, one of Reb Chia and one of Reb Shia. There's a chart over here where it's what the phrases were. We said that there were 4 words. How we ended off yesterday. Tachas, Nesina, Yeshalim, or Kesev. It explains each one. Yeah, I made a chart for myself. So okay. So we tell the Bachim in Yeshiva when they're learning, they always ask a question. They always say, why do I have to study from the original? I can just learn from an art scroll. So anyway, they don't get that we're teaching them how to learn, not how to derive it. But anyway, I always tell them, I said, no, the art scroll is there to see if they got it right. You're supposed to use it and see if the art scroll got it right. Okay. Now the Mishnah says that if it would say shur, which means ox, and it would say mava, which could mean one of two things, but if it would say shur and mava, ox and mava, then I wouldn't be able to learn fire from it because this and this both have a living spirit in it. They're both alive, whether it's mava means adam or whether it means an animal. Animal and humans are alive. They have a living spirit. So it'd say maybe that's going to be chayiv. However, fire, which doesn't have a living spirit, would not be chayiv. So it goes like this. Amar of Misharshi Mishmei Rav. I'm sorry, I missed the question. Mike Amar, what does it mean to say that this and this have a living spirit in it? Amar Misharshi Mishmei Rav. Misharshi says name of Rav Hachi Kamar. This is what it means. Let the Torah only say 2 out of the 4 damages. And I will learn the other ones from that. I'll learn another one from that. That you can't learn 1 from 2. Okay, how would it work? How would I learn I would take 2 damages and I would take the common factor from them and I would learn other damages from it. So for example, shur, I would say, let's say shur means Karen, according to Rab. Means all types, but Karen with Kavanas Lahazit. I would say, well, if you're obligated by shur and mafed, then you should be chayav also for fire. Say 1 second. Shur is Kavanas Lahazit. It has intention when it does damage. Fire doesn't have any intention. It says, yeah, but Shane doesn't intend to do damage. Mafed, if mafed is Shane. Shane doesn't intend to do damage. So we'd say, okay, but Shane has enjoyment when it does damage. The fire doesn't have enjoyment. It says, yeah, but Karen doesn't have the enjoyment when it does damage. That's eating, right? So it'd say, well, the common factor between them is that they cause damage, and I should learn out fire as well. And I would say the same thing for if Mave is Adam. It's chayiv ben arba dvarim. Say, but fire is not chayiv in 4 things. It says, well, so what? Neither is shar.
I think it's
and it's still chayiv.
Hard to assign intentional animals in the first place.
Right. Except for Karen, because you see it's scoring on with intention to cause damage.
That's what I'm.
Right.
I also. You can't ask an animal like.
So Hadaramar, but then the Mishnah says that Chadamitati Layasi. I won't be able to learn one from the other. Why? Because those 2 things that you're trying to derive from, those 2 have Ruach Hayim, they have the spirit of life, and fire doesn't have the spirit of life. Amar Rava. Rava comes in and he says something interesting. He says, V'kulu, all of the damages, Kishadis bar ba'adayu, if you place or if you throw the pit amongst them, asikula b'matzad, I could learn all of them. You see, the Mishnah was set up with a certain pattern that it takes shar and mava at the beginning. It says I can't learn one from the other, and then it goes to ruach hayim. It goes to eish. I can't learn fire out of the ox and the mava, and then it goes to the pit. I can't learn the pit out of all of those because all of those move around. Rava says if the Mishnah would have said it a little differently, you would actually be able to derive everything from any of the animals together with the pit. And we'll go like this, with fire as well. Anything with the pit would work. Lavarmi Karen, except for Karen. Karen would not work. I wouldn't be able to learn Karen. Karen means that it gores. Karen means the horn. It has intention to do damage. That I wouldn't be able to learn out. Let me give you an example.
This what you're talking about?
Those 13, I would learn it from what's called over there, opinion of, I would learn it from number 3. Number 3, it says a general principle derived from 1 biblical text or from 2 related biblical texts is applicable to all similar cases, though not specified in detail. So number 3 over there is what the Gemara is using. Then I would say, since it says that damages are obligated, I would be able to derive all other damages from that because it's a similar principle, right?
Like the fire doesn't have life. I think that the fire would be similar like to an animal because it is live, like it's uncontrollable. Kind of like a wild animal.
Yeah. So what are the 5 or 6 characteristics of life according to science? It reproduces itself, homeostasis, right? It balances itself out. That's the fire doesn't have all of the characteristics of life. I think a virus is a machlekes amongst the scientists. It has a characteristic of life. But remember when they were studying science, they said, if you take those 5 characters, at the beginning of every science book, it has what's the characteristics of life. It says if you take those characteristics, what about a copy machine? Seems like a copy machine has life. Okay. Anyway,
Is the Gemara saying that a boar has ruach?
no. What it's saying is that if I would take, you see, we skip what we did. The Mishnah skips the order of the Mishnah is
Shor and
Shor, Mava, and Hever.
right.
But then when it says that this is not like that, it goes from Shor to Mava. Shor is not like Mava. Okay, and Mava is not like Shor. Then it says, now Shor and Mava are not like fire.
Right.
And fire is not like Shor and Mava. Then it says that Shor, Mava, and fire are not like Bar. It goes back to example B.
But it's not comparing fire and pit.
Now it's saying, now what Rav is saying, that's what the Mishnah did. What Rav is saying is that if I would take any of the 3, Shor, or Mava, or fire, and I would add Bar to it,
Right.
so it would be Shor and Bar, Mava and Bar, or Aish and Bar, I would be able to derive the other ones.
Right.
And I wouldn't need, wouldn't need to say it. I would be able to figure it out.
Right. Okay.
That's what Rav is saying. Now, the way that there's a nice long Rashi here. Rashi does every option. I'll just give you one, and so you'll see what's going on. I would say like this, that if a pit that doesn't move around, and nevertheless you're obligated to that it shouldn't cause damage. And if it does, you're obligated, right? If it doesn't even move around, it's not such a big obstacle. It's just it's an obstacle, but it doesn't move around and cause damage. It's just right here. But nevertheless, you're obligated. So for sure, you should have to pay for Mava, or you should pay for fire. Those move around. You have to be careful. The Gemara says, 1 second. I would say I would have a question on that. But the pit has only one immediately when it's created, it already causes damage. But the Mava, let's say the animal is not damaging. Animal has other things that it does. It doesn't just cause damage. It's an animal, and it also could cause damage. But I would say that I'm not obligated for the animal just because it says the pit. So I would add in 1 second. But I know that I'm chayav for Karen, let's say. Right? I'm putting Karen with. I know that I'm chayav for Karen so it says, yeah, but Karen you're chayav because it has intention to cause damage. It says, yeah, but a pit doesn't have intention to cause damage, and you're still chayav. So from Keren and Bar, I would have been able to derive Mava, and I would be able to derive Aish. And the same thing as with each of them. I would put anything together with Bar, and what Bar would do was would say, whatever strength Aish has, or whatever strength Mava has, whatever strength it has, I would be able to say, but Bar doesn't have that, and it's still chayav. And then I would say, but Bar has a certain strength that it's Tchilas Asiyos Elenazik. When it was first made, it's already causing damage. It's already it only has like one. It's damaging from the beginning. So, but I would say, yeah, but the animal or whatever I'm deriving doesn't have that, and I would be able to learn everything else. So if that's the case, the Gemara says, except for Keren. If I wouldn't have Keren together with Bar, I wouldn't be able to derive Keren out of Bar. Keren means that it gores to cause damage. Why?
Sorry, I didn't hear. Can you explain why fire is being used?
Yeah. Fire causes damage. I would say like this, that if an animal causes damage, I have to pay. And if a pit causes damage, I have to pay. So I should have to pay with fire as well. So what are you gonna, how different could it be than both of those? Let's say, well, the animal, let's say, has enjoyment when it eats or something. Fire doesn't have enjoyment when it consumes. Let's say, yeah, but the pit doesn't also. In the pit, you see the pit, you're obligated. So it's not the enjoyment that makes you obligated. So I would say, but 1 second, but the pit was made and it causes damage originally. The fire doesn't cause damage. Originally, the fire was made to cook or something. I don't know.
Humans set the fire.
Yeah, human set. Yeah, we're talking about that you set the fire in your property and it traveled to someone else's.
What about the pit if it has like a sign on it?
Oh, so that was already protecting it. We're talking about where the person didn't protect it, and that's why he's obligated. Yeah.
The only animal that causes problems since the beginning are these wicked people that occupy us.
Yeah, we don't want to be.
No, I don't want to say a name because I don't want you to think they can
Yeah. We're different than them because we don't have the hatred that they. Okay. Where are we holding? We could ask like this.
We're up there.
Am I jumping? Kishadis bar beinayo? Is that what you're saying?
No,
Okay.
under that.
Okay, let's start from Labar mi Karen. Except for Karen, Labar means besides for. Besides for Karen, because on Karen you could ask a question. Everything else is obligated to pay from the very first time. But Karen, if you remember, it's an ox that gores. It takes 3 times to become obligated to pay full price. And I can't derive from any of the other ones. It's too unique. I would say that I can't figure out from the other ones. So, but there is an opinion that says that Karen is the most reason to be obligated because it has intention when it causes damage, and that's for sure you should have to pay for. So then I don't even need that. For sure I could learn out from everything. You're right. So then why did the Torah have to write everything? We know the Torah tries to limit itself to the very bare minimum of what it needs to write, and everything else is derived from that. Like Rashi says in this week's parsha, that many halachas are learned from just some details. That's the big question. Why is so many times does it repeat the whole story? But the halachas we learn from one extra vav, or it's missing a yud, and it teaches me something. And here you were writing a whole paragraph, a whole sentence, or whatever. So the Gemara says because each one of these damages has its own halacha, and that's why it's necessary to write it. I can't compare each one. Each one has an individual set of laws that surround it. For example, Keren, when the ox scores, that type of damage has a difference between if it's tame, we didn't do it more than 3 times, and if it was forewarned. If it did it already 3 times, then you should have known better, right? That's that only applies to Keren. Shein v'regel, when the animal eats or when the animal tramples on something, that is very unique because that's the Paitrim B'Shus HaRabim. That's exempt if it eats in the public property. It's only obligated if it strays off the road and goes into someone's private property and eats. That's when you have to pay. And you get a phone call from the owner of the thing. He says, "Can you get your ox out of my property? It's eating all my things." So then that's when you have to pay, not when the person left his bundle in the street or something. But what about the pit? Lifter by a sakelim. There's a unique halacha by a pit that you're exempt if vessels are broken in a pit. The reason, I don't know if we know the reason for this, but the pasuk says, "The nafal shama sharei chamar," and an ox or a donkey will fall into the pit. The person has to pay. The person who dug the pit or the person who uncovered the pit has to pay. The Gemara says an ox or a donkey. That means an ox and not a person, and a donkey and not the vessels. Because it says an ox or a donkey, because it chose that example. It says usually an ox would be together with a person and a donkey would be together with a load of vessels. But it seems like you're only obligated to pay for the ox or the donkey, but not the vessels along with it. So we learn from a pasuk that you're exempt. You're exempt for paying for the damages that are caused to the vessels. You're only obligated to pay for the damages of the animal. Or for a person, you're exempt. Exempt from the death of a person. Yeah.
Oh.
If the house gets injured, are you supposed to pay like 4 or 5 times? Or that's only like if the death of the
No,
ox?
that's only if you steal an ox and then you sell it or slaughter it. That's 4 or 5 times. This is just the damage. Only pay once, tops. Yeah, it's just the regular damage. This is nothing intentional here. The guy dug a pit. He went to the beach, and he was playing in the sand, and he forgot to cover it up when he left.
So he would pay like for the vet bill for the ox?
Yeah, he pays for the ox, but not for the vessels that are on it. Ox probably doesn't have vessels, but for whatever else goes along with it. Okay. What about Rabbi Yehuda? We're gonna have a Gemara later that says, what does he do with the word chamar? What does Rabbi Yehuda learn out of that? I think the Gemara doesn't know what he learns out of it. I think it's like, oh, kasha. But whatever.
They're using it as like garbage.
What do you mean, the pit? If the pit has a use, you still have to cover it. You would have to cover it. The person didn't cover it, so then it causes damage. So then he has to pay. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to pay for kalim as well. So what is the uniqueness of the bar? It says lifted by a sa'adam. Everyone holds that you're exempt. If a man falls in the pit, the man apparently is supposed to be more careful. And if he falls into a pit, it's his fault as well. And the person is not obligated. But we learned it from a pasuk, but there could be a logic to it as well. Why does it say if a person causes damage? If your property causes damage, you're obligated. And for sure, if you cause damage, you're obligated to pay. Means your animals. Your animals cause damage. So l'chayvei barba dvarim, to make you obligated in the 4 other types of payments, which are nezik tzar sheves ripit boishas, which is the pain and the loss of work and the doctor bills and all of that. Okay. Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
I don't need to call you and say, hey, your ox is eating my
Uh-huh. Now, if
That doesn't become it doesn't make a kinyan on the ox. It doesn't make a kinyan on the ox if it's in its own.
No,
domain.
is the reason for that because you're allowed to protect your property? Uh-huh. Avraham Nassim is mentioning that if an ox goes into someone's property, so the owner of the property is allowed to slaughter the ox. What does he do with the meat? He has to give it to the owner? Oh, you can just keep the whole ox? No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
To his life or
I'm not sure. I don't know about that. I have to check that out.
People could take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Free ox.
No, take care of your ox. I'm owner of my yard.
Now, it could be there's a fine that they.
You ever seen those signs warning owner has a gun?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Stay off my yard.
Equal force still applies to it.
Sort of shot.
Okay.
You can't just shoot you if you don't have a weapon or even a knife.
And your grandma.
You what?
Huh?
You what?
You don't snag your grandma.
It's manslaughter.
If you're on my territory, my property, I'm friend.
Depends on the state.
It depends on the state, I think. Okay.
Equal force.
Anyways.
What about Aish? What about why does it say fire? It says lifted by a sataman to exempt you from very interesting halacha that if someone lights a fire in his own property and it travels into his neighbor's property, this fire spreads. And then in his neighbor's property, there's like a haystack, and in the haystack there's utensils, there's other things that are hiding in the haystack. That he's the owner of the fire. There's an owner to the fire, and the person that ignited the fire has to pay for everything except for the things that were hidden. He's exempt. For things that were hidden, he doesn't have to pay. So it's a special halacha that applies to fire. Lifted by a sataman. Rabbi Yehuda the mechayev al niski taman beish. What about according to Rabbi Yehuda? He comes up again and he says that you are obligated for that. So why do we need to say fire? What's the unique halacha that applies to fire? What's it coming to include? Even if there are certain things that it's not normal for fire to cause damage to, like things that don't burn. For example, a field that shouldn't be burning. It's just the soil.
Sometimes you burn your crop.
You burn the crop, but here, if the field was plowed and nothing was planted in it, but then a fire comes along and scorches the already plowed field, that causes damage, and it causes a type of damage that it doesn't really consume it, but it still is damage. Or a sichzach havanav means if it's blackened the rocks of a home or something. So even though it didn't consume it, which we wouldn't usually think that that's fire damage, it is considered fire damage. It's not, and a person has to pay for that. Special halachas. Okay. Other times we would say that if it does something abnormal, like if an animal would eat something that's abnormal, we would say maybe that he's exempt, or we would call it keren, or not fully obligated. Here he's obligated 100%, even though that's not the regular damage of a fire. Well, now the Mishnah says the common denominator, the common factor that we have in all of these damages is that it's your money, which means it's your property. You're obligated to watch it, and if it causes damage, you have to pay from the best of your property. Well, when you do that, when you make it tzad you say that the common factor of all of these is, what you really mean to say is that this law should apply to any other case that we didn't mention. That's why you're extracting that common factor. What are you coming to include? Now, what the Gemara is suggesting here is that because we have 4 categories, everything should be included under one of those 4 categories. So what is not included in those 4 categories that I need the tzad hashava to include? Right, and we should have everything included under those subcategories, long list of subcategories.
They did add, I think there was like some debate whether or not those subcategories would be like a 5th or 6th or 7th main category.
We have, I think we gave like 4 examples of subcategories for each of one of those 4. So, at least for the animals we did. So Lasuye Amar Abaya, we have Abaya here that comes in. We're going to have, in this Gemara, we're going to have 4 explanations for the Gemara's question, Lasuye Mai. We're going to have an answer given by Abaya. We're going to have an answer given by Rava. We're going to have an answer given by Ravada Barava. We're going to have an answer given by Ravina. They're all basically the same. They're very, very similar. They have all a similar pattern. So the Gemara, you're going to, it's a little bit repetitive. It's a little twist that makes it like it doesn't fit under this category, it doesn't fit under that category. I needed the common denominator to tell me that you're obligated. Yeah. See, this, when you get to here, now you can already start discussing in the modern world what type of damages are you'd be obligated for. See, at the beginning, I remember one of my students years ago said, I don't get to study Gemara so much. So I've been studying Gemara for 4 years already. And every year we learn about an ox that gored, an ox that gored this, gored 4 or 5 times, gored a cow and the animal was right next to it. And, so it says, I never even saw an ox. I don't know why all of this is relevant. So, but what you're supposed to be able to do is to recognize that, just like in law, you have to look for precedent, what happened before, and then you can have to see what the law would be in the case that we're dealing with right here. So the same thing would apply to this. So here we have Amar Abaya. Abaya says, let's say someone put something on his either his porch or his roof. Here it says the top of his roof, and a common wind blew it off, and it caused damage. What's the case? If it caused damage while it was flying through the air in a common wind, if it would be an abnormal wind, then we would say that he's exempt because I wasn't expecting it to happen. Now, today, a hurricane, you're supposed to expect it. So I don't know if the halacha would be the same, because when they tell you there's a hurricane coming, you should take your furniture in from your porch and put it inside, not leave it outside. But in those days, they didn't know when a hurricane was coming, and it's all of a sudden there's a hurricane. I didn't know. Was I supposed to know that? So if it causes damage while it was moving, so I know Aish, that's the same law that goes under the category of fire. I don't need the common factor. I have it under the category of fire. It's the same thing. What how does fire work? Some other power comes in, the wind, and it mixes into my property, which is my fire, which is my obligation to guard, and it starts causing damage, and I'm obligated. So too here, I have another power, excuse me, the wind comes in, and it causes the damage. I should be obligated to pay. Someone told me
tornado, you don't know if you have.
yeah, tornado, you don't really have the warning, but they do still have warnings. They do have like a watch or something. Someone told me by one of the hurricanes in Surfside. He told me, he said he looked outside his back window, and he sees that he had a trampoline in the backyard. He sees like it's starting to lift off the ground. He says this is getting dangerous. So anyway, he goes to get a machete. It's gonna make a big cut, a circle in it, so it shouldn't take off in flight. So as he's going, he looks through the front window. He sees a trampoline flying down the down the street. He runs outside and he makes like a big X in it. He cuts it. So, anyway, yeah, he goes back to his backyard. He sees it was his neighbor's trampoline. His was still sitting there. Anyway, but yeah, that could cause damage. So Ella the Basa Denaichi, that would be fire, because if it causes damage while it's moving, it goes under the category of fire. So here, so what are we talking about? That it landed. Okay, it stopped. Idaf Garino, the Gemara says, if you made it hefker, bein l'rav, bein l'shmol hainabar. Hefker means if you make it ownerless. So then that's just like putting an obstacle, a pit. A pit is an obstacle. Any obstacle in the public domain is just like a pit. You could dig a pit or you can place an obstacle and it's the same problem. So it goes under the category of an obstacle, right? It fell off your roof and it landed. Now it's a pit. If you make it hefker, if you make it ownerless, it's considered a pit. Just like the pit, right? When it goes there, it can already cause damage. So to this, and it's your property, you have an obligation to watch it. Yeah, this is the same thing. Maybe you're not making it hefker. Maybe you're still keeping it. Now that we had a machlekes before Rav and Shmuel about if you don't make it hefker, what category does it go under? If you don't make it ownerless. So we're talking about now, we're suggesting that maybe you don't make it hefker. What category would it go under? According to Shmuel, that says it doesn't matter if you made it ownerless, you don't make it ownerless, it's always considered a pit, it's an obstacle in public property. So then it's the same thing, it's bar. So what are you telling me that I need the common factor? It says loylam daf grina, really you made it hefker. So bar, but it's still not similar to bar. Why? To a pit. Malabar shekain kayachachamurav by termbanish kayachachamurav them. Could have said that a pit doesn't have any other power that's mixed into it. You dug a pit and you're obligated to watch it. Over here, you put something on your roof and another power came along and pushed it off. The wind pushed it off. It's a little different than a pit. Maybe a pit is because you actually dug it by hand. Over here, you didn't do it by hand. There was another power that we were supposed to watch that, but that would be to watch it so it doesn't cause damage while it's moving. That would be like fire. But over here, it's like maybe similar to an inus. That once it lands, maybe it's not you didn't actually put it there. The wind put it there. It says, you see from fire that you're obligated, even though there's another power that mixes in, the wind. It says, yeah, but fire always causes damage when it's moving. That's what fire does when the wind comes in, it causes that damage. Well, but so the pit tells me that it causes causes damage even when it's stationary, and I'm still obligated. So I'll go like in a vicious cycle and say, well, it's not comparable to this because of that. It's not comparable to this because of that. It's not comparable to the pit. because the pit doesn't have the other power mixed in. It's not, well, the fire does, and the fire, it's not compared to the fire, because the fire is when it moves. There's a station. Well, the pit station will go back and forth. I'll never get.
Maybe
So
they're comparing a natural disaster to a man-made, something that's man-made.
yeah, but we're really looking only at an obligation of a person's obligation to guard and pay. That's really what we're looking for over here. It's like very, torts, the laws of damages, laws of damages, when you have to pay for damages that the person caused.
Can you just say some from before? When you talked about 5 characteristics of life, because I was right before you said that, to say, wait a minute.
The doctor's attacking me on the 5
No, I'm
characteristics
not.
of life.
I'm not. No, because a lot of things fire say, well, can fire reproduce? Well, yeah, fire makes fire. Look at the forest fire, right? Can fire consume? Yeah, it consumes. It's the same forest fire. Can fire walk? Yeah, it goes from one place to another. Can fire destroy? You can do it. You can say for everything except one. Fire is not made up of cells.
Oh.
All living human things are made up of cells. That's the only difference from fire and everything.
Okay.
Good answer.
Okay. Yeah.
You knew that? Did you did it?
Okay. We're up to Rava. Abaya introduced that what the Tzad HaShavah Behem is teaching us is something that flies off a roof and becomes a pit, and becomes an obstacle. Rava Amar Lasi Bara Meskalgal Baragli Adam Ragli Behema. Rava says we're talking about an obstacle that's being kicked around by people and animals. Someone put something on the floor and it's just being kicked around. Echidami. I think people would take advantage of this by when they mop the floors in the supermarkets. Like people would go in and before they close, they would stop people and people go in and fall and then sue. Wasn't that like a common thing?
I was just thinking of that. I read in the commentary that the reason why you don't have to pay for people pit damages, because people should be intelligent and be aware that there's a pit and walk around it. But in the secular world, like people like trip and fall like all the time in soup cases. Right. But there's a difference. There's a difference because there's a difference. And that is that a pit, you're obligated to pay for damages to the human. You just don't have to pay for death. You still have to pay for damages, even according to the Gemara. You still have to pay for damages.
So if they die,
there's no.
You don't know anything. But if they're disabled for life,
then you have to pay. Yeah.
So you go over there with your machete and then you kill them.
No, then you have to pay because of the machete. No, you don't have to pay. You go to capital punishment, not you. The guy whoever does that.
You just drop the machete in, and gravity goes.
That goes under other categories.
So what if somebody falls in the pit and they hurt themselves?
The owner of the pit has to pay.
And then you don't put a sign, you don't cover it out, and then somebody else falls in.
Right, they'd have to pay for that as well. Yeah, it's okay. So Rava says it's coming to include a pit that's being kicked around by people. Now, this is going to be slightly different than the way a person digs a pit. Normally, when a person digs a pit, it's stationary. He puts that's where it is. If he makes it on a list. Now, I think Rashi and Taisus discuss over here the version of this. It is according to Rashi leaves out some words from the Gemara that Taisus adds in. According to Taisus, there is possibility that there becomes an obligation on 2 people. Well, there's one person that put it there, and there's another person that kicked it around, and it could be that both of them are going to be obligated. Or if an animal kicks it around, and this Taisus goes through like how it's possible that there could be more than one person that's obligated. Like 2 people were involved in this. One person put it, another animal moved it. Well, Idaf Garino, Rashi leaves all of this out. He says we're talking about some obstacle that's being kicked around, If it was made ownerless, being l'Rav l'Shmuel hainu bar, so it goes under the category of bar. Why do you have to tell me it's coming from the common factor? It goes straight on, directly under one of the primary categories of damages. You were obligated to watch it. When it was put there, it could cause damage originally. And so you're obligated. It goes under the primary category of bar. Delay afkarino must be that you didn't make it ownerless. Well, it says, so what? The Shmuel damar kulmi bar lemana hainu bar. According to Shmuel, that's still a bar. According to Rav, it goes under the category of shar. La'olam dafkarino. Really, you did make it ownerless. But it's not similar to the pit. Malabar came ma'asav garmalay. Tamahanish came she'in ma'asav garmalay. By a pit, you dug it. Over here, you put it there, but there's someone else that came in and moved it around. See, Rav is very similar to Abaya. Abaya had this thing on the roof that flew off. Rav has this thing on the ground that gets kicked around by other people. It's almost the same answer.
How do you move?
It's an obstacle, not it's a second
somewhere.
category. It's an offshoot of pit. A pit is when you dig in the ground, and a tolda is an obstacle on the floor. So, but here that obstacle, it goes under the category of pit. So, but by a pit, you are the one that dug it. You're the one that caused the whole damage. But over here, you're not the only one. So, because someone else moved it around. So it says shor yechiach. But you have that same problem when it comes to an ox. It's not you that caused the damage, it's your ox that moved it. Just like by your pit, it was an ox that kicked it, or a person that kicked it, or someone else. But over here also by the ox, it causes damage not directly from you. It says, but an ox moves and it causes damage while it's moving. So it's a moving damager. You should know that, and you should guard it. But by the pit, by the obstacle, it's not causing damage while it's moving. So bar techiach, but you're obligated by a regular obstacle, by a regular pit. So v'chazar adin, the strength of this one is not like the strength of that one. We're going to use the common denominator. Tell me that anything that's your property and you're obligated to watch, you're going to be chayav on this as well. We found another example of something that doesn't fit directly under one category. Ravad Barava Amar Lasuye, Ravad Barava says coming to include Hadatanya, what it was said in the Bryce. All of these things that we said, place can be the same, a go from the same, Mesachami, Lemrishus, Mesachasham, Yesh Lemrishus. Alf Pisha Rishus, Meziko Hebel Lashalim. Okay, there's a rule that we're going to have later, more elaborated on, is that opening sewage or drain pipes. In the summer, you're not allowed to do that, but in the winter, you're allowed to do that. Sort of like people washing their car in the rain. But they turn. If you had if they had drains or sewage, how do they empty it out? So in the winter, when the roads were anyways full of rain and everything was muddy and all of that, they were allowed to open their drain and let it all out and go together with the whole city's. But in the summer, you weren't allowed to do that because the roads were dry and it wasn't supposed to have all of that in there. So it says, even though you're allowed to do that, you're allowed to open up your drain and let the sewage go out into the public area because it's already muddy and all of that. But nevertheless, if it causes damage, you're obligated to pay for it. Now that's very unique. It's unique because you have permission, but you're still obligated. Usually if you have permission, that means that you're exempt from obligation, but nevertheless, you're still obligated. Hey, Chidami, what's going on? If when you opened it up, the forces hit something, so that's considered a person that causes damage. Person turns on a hose very strong. That's his koyach, right? You can't say it wasn't me, it was the water. It's like when he shoots a bullet, you can't say it wasn't me, it was the gun, right? That's him. It's literally him. Ella Basadanaicha must be after it landed. Okay. Now, Hechidami, what's the case? If he makes it ownerless, which I assume he does, but maybe he doesn't. Sometimes they would like it to turn into they could put things in the public area. They would want it to become fertilizer. It would get compressed by the when walking, and then that would be considered. But when you do that, so then if you're mafkir, if you make it ownerless, then it's a bar.
Human waste is supposed to be used for fertilizer.
I think after a year it can be. After 12 months, I think you can. But Maishna bar the tfilas asiyas nezek meinchesh merasin alecha. Ani nami tfilas asiyas meinchesh merasin alecha. You have the same obligation. It's your property. You have to guard it, and if it causes damage, you're obligated. Ella delay after. We're talking about you didn't make it ownerless. When I learned this Gemara, so I came up with this idea that because the cars are driving on the road, there's got to be a way to create electricity from putting something on the road, the wires along the road or something. If the cars drive over it, we could at least make electricity. We have windmills, right? But if the cars are driving anyway, so wouldn't that be a way to create electricity? It's a great idea. I thought, like, look, a yeshiva bacher is going to make some money.
You need to patent it.
But I told it to someone that I thought knows physics. He says, no, you can't get energy. You can't create if there's input, if there's output, there has to be input. It's going to cost, it's more consumption of the fuel if it's going to do anything. Anyway, I don't know.
Patent.
Okay.
Most traffic lights have sensors under the road to change the light.
Yeah, to change that. I'm talking about to generate electricity.
No, I know, but it's
Right, the Gemara says that they would create fertilizer by all the passerbys walking on it. You get the population to everyone is driving. It could do something. No? Okay, so
the first time they tried it with a treadmill in this area of the road. So when the car came to it, it generated, except the car never went anywhere.
Did you say something about making a pit hefker?
Yeah.
4-year-old week.
Well,
Yeah.
How does that work? How can you take a dangerous situation and say now it's hefker?
Right. So that's exactly what the Torah says. The Torah says that we even though you claim that it's not yours, but we put it in under your obligation. We consider it yours.
Okay.
That's according to Shmuel. It's always, even if you make it hefker, it's always considered your obligation. Yeah. Rav says if it's hefker, then it goes under the category of pit. But if you own it, then it goes under the category of your ox. And Shmuel says even if you own it, it goes under the category of a pit. Yeah, I just want to turn the page.
The alternator, any car regenerates the battery, and in hybrid cars, the oil, in driving regenerates the electrical parts of the mileage from the electric. So we have it in the car. We don't have the car.
Find someone that knows the science.
No,
and
just patent it in case, because maybe one day they'll figure out how to do it. And then you listen. I want you to know, if you look up the Google patent for Siri, ask Siri, hey Siri, or ask Google. It has like 10 people that they give credit to that preceded them, and they got the idea from that. My son is one of them.
Oh, really?
Unfortunately, he put in the patent before them, but somehow Google got the patent ahead of him. So we can't figure that one out. We believe it, but they at least get.
Okay, so Ella delayaf garino l'shmol dar mekom b'hainu bar. So it says leilam daf garino. Really? Did I just skip up in here? No. Leilam delayaf garino. Really, you didn't make it on the list. But it's still not considered like a bar. Malabar a regular pit, you don't have permission to put it there. You have permission. Well, show your ox. You do have permission to let it roam around. And nevertheless, you're still obligated. Well, so then we'll go back and forth. Then we'll say that it's the common factor that makes you obligated. I want to finish this till the next piece. So give me another. A few lines here. Ravina says, it's coming to include what it taught. If a wall or a tree that fell into a public area caused damage, you're exempt from paying. If they gave the person time, if they said you have a certain amount of time to cut down the tree or to break down the wall because it's a hazard, and it fell during the time that they gave him into a public area. Oh, so 1 second. That's the Gemara is going to. Did it cause damage while it was falling, or it caused damage after it fell?
Got tripped
Let's
over the
see,
fallen branches, or the guy get hit by the tree when it fell?
Right. Let's take a look. It says, if it fell after the time, then he's exempt. If it fell after the time, he's obligated, right? What does it say over there? Hey Chidami, what's the case? If you made it ownerless, we're talking about that caused damage after it fell, while it was stationary. That's good. That's considered a pit. Now the Gemara does a little twist on you over here, and it says usually by the pit we said that it was originally it causes damage. Here it uses a term that it borrows from regel. But just like a pit, which is very common to cause damage, and you have to watch it. This is also common to cause damage. It's in the property. If you didn't make it ownerless, the shmuel goes under the primary category of bar anyway. When it says leilam dafkin, you made it ownerless. But it's not similar to the pit. This was not made originally as a damage. This was made originally as a wall. This was made originally as a tree. And nevertheless, it caused damage after it fell. A shar wasn't made originally to cause damage. It was made as an animal, right? It happens to cause damage on the side. But an ox goes around and causes damage. So the pit proves it. And that I would have to go. It would go back and forth. I wouldn't be able to derive from it. And what I end up doing is I derive from the tzad hashavat common factor. Okay, let's leave it over here.
What about, is this applied to also?
Does a modern based in here claims of damages like these?